Chair Kent.
Here.
Oh, there we go.
Let's start with ex parte, because I think as Chair Fields pointed out, that should probably be before the consent calendar. Ex parte communications includes verbal and written communication between individual commissioners and a party with a real interest in pending commission decision. Ex parte communications should be avoided on matters pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission, as they are perceived to represent evidence that may unfairly influence a commission's decision on a matter before the full commission. If such contact does occur, the substance of the communication shall be disclosed before the full commission and public in advance of public hearing items on the agenda. Written ex parte communication shall be forwarded to staff so that it may be disclosed to the full commission and public. Does anyone have any ex parte?
I do not.
I don't think so.
No.
No.
I do. I emailed Susan. I didn't send the email back. I was just requesting a question about if she's seen the creek lately, because I'm on Friends of Five Creeks. We have that historic interest in that creek. At that point, Susan sent me an email, which is pretty much what you have here. Moving down into the consent calendar. The consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the commission. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the commission or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Does anyone from the audience request removal from anything from the consent calendar? From the commission?
I do have just one clarification I wanted to make on the minutes. Oh, should I do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. On page 6 of the minutes, I guess it's around line 2021, it indicates that my comments were that the project we were looking at on San Pablo should meet or exceed parking requirements. I don't think I said, or at least I didn't intend to have it be my comment, that it should exceed parking requirements. I think I just wanted to clarify that my comment would be it should either meet the parking requirements or provide sufficient justification for the waiver or reduction of parking requirements. That's all.
You?
Can I just ask a procedural clarification point for the consent calendar? If we hypothetically approve everything on the consent calendar, does that mean we're approving to continue the second item to a date uncertain?
Yeah. Yeah. And we actually anticipate coming back to you in 2 weeks with that item.
Okay.
In any event, can I pull the second item for a minor discussion or for
Sure.
a comment I want to make?
Let's pull the second item.
That's the Nomi Boba Tea Cafe, right?
Oh, I thought that was.
Is that right?
That's the third item.
That's the third item. Oh,
You want to pull that?
that's the one I want to pull.
So if we can adjust
What's the
the
second?
minutes to meet with Commissioner Jennings' comment, and we will also vote on the second item, which is planning application 18054.
Okay.
Design review for a 2-level addition at 1060 Evelyn Avenue. No comments on that. Then we can vote to pass those 2 items right now.
So item 2 will be coming back to us then.
Yeah, item 2, just so that the commission is aware, we caught kind of at the last minute that there's actually a vertical extension of a non-conforming wall, and that's why we need to renotice the project.
Okay. Okay. Mhm. All right.
Well, let's ask, when you want to pull for a minor comment on.
Okay, on the third item then, the Boba Tea Cafe. Staff, I was interested in your interpretation of this as being a takeout restaurant which requires one parking space for 100 square feet of floor space. I would interpret it as being either food and beverage sales or as being neighborhood retail, in which case it would have the same parking ratio as the old Supercuts did. And so I don't know, that's just my thought on it. I don't think that, I don't know what the business is exactly, but I don't think it's going to have the draw of a takeout cafe like, say, Little Star Pizza would. And I don't think it'll have the parking demand of that. I think it's more the kind of use that people are walking down the sidewalk and they're on Solano and they'll go in there for a drink. I don't really know the nature of the business, but I was surprised to think that the parking demand on that with that kind of business, what little I know about it, could be so high. And we have a category in the code for retail food and beverage sales, which is 1 per 400 square feet, and a category for neighborhood retail, which is 1 per 400 square feet, and I kind of think they'd fit better. So.
The proposed business, the business owner said that there is a component of the business that will be takeout snacks like popcorn chicken and stuff like that, which is why we felt like it may be takeout food to go. And because there was no floor plan presented, we don't know if there is seating involved or not. So that's why staff made that decision.
And just to clarify, for retail food and beverage sales, it notes typical uses includes supermarkets, specialty food stores, liquor stores, or delicatessens. And I'm not sure if this business falls under that classification.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Well, I still think that parking demand like that, of that high for a business like this is unrealistic. It's the way it looks to me anyway, so, okay. Those are my comments, and otherwise I can move to approve it, I think. I don't think it's going to have a big problem, And is this here for approval, or that is, isn't it?
It's for approval this evening.
Yeah, yeah.
It is for approval.
Okay.
So we would just approve all, even though the second one would come back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The second one's being continued to a date uncertain.
okay.
I guess I'll make a motion, to approve the consent calendar, which includes the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes of July 25th with Commissioner Jennings' edits to her comments, and planning application 18-054, continue 1060 Evelyn Avenue to continue that, and planning application 18-061, 1475 Solano, approve as presented.
All in favor, say aye.
Do we need a second?
Need a second?
All in favor of second? Say second.
I can second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. I think we still have on item 3.2, there's still the 14-day appeal period, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so
3.3.
application 18054 at 1060 Evelyn Avenue, there's still a 14-day appeal period if somebody wants to appeal that later date. Keep the story polls up.
Don't you mean 3.3? It's 3.2, we just.
Oh, you're right, all right, thank you, Mr. Jennings. I meant, yes, there's an appeal period on planning application 18061, the Bobo Tea Cafe at 1475 Solano Avenue, and there aren't any story polls on that, are there? It's just the parking. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Public comment. Item 5. For persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda, please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for a comment or to a future agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing no response, that's a no. Moving on to item 6, discussion and possible actions on matters related to the following. First up is planning application 18-060, design review and parking reduction for 1057 East Shore, Target. I'd like to introduce that project.
Yes. Before you tonight is an application proposal from Target for parking reduction and design review. Just to give you kind of some context for where we are in your review tonight, this is a study session. Separate from this application, another application was filed by Target for a tentative parcel map. Rather than separate out the entitlements, which could create processing issues, we want to bring it to you as one complete package because the parking reduction is directly related to the tentative parcel map, and they go hand in hand, so they should be approved concurrently. So for your review tonight, we're going to ask that you, receive the staff report, hear from the applicant, open the public hearing, and then provide feedback to the applicant and staff, and we'll come back to you with all of the entitlements as one package at a future date. So the subject site is 9 acres with an existing 173,000 square foot building that includes the garden center. Actually, I think it's 175,000 square feet. What the applicant is proposing to do is demolish the former garden center space, which is a little over 8,000 square feet. That would be replaced with sidewalk landscaping areas and 20 parking stalls. That portion of the facade where the demolition is proposed would be restored to match with the existing building appearance. Overall, the site parking would be reduced from 516 off-street spaces, where 439 were required, ultimately to 376 off-street spaces. And just to kind of give you some context, so the Target project was approved in 2003 and included an EIR, conditional use permit for the retail use, design review for the actual building, parcel map consolidating some existing non-conforming lots at the time and creating new parcels, and then a variance to exceed the height limit. So the project was built and completed in 2004. Unfortunately, the garden center closed in 2011. There was a brief occupancy by a third-party nursery, which subsequently closed, and it's been vacant for the past 4 years. Sure, everybody's somewhat familiar with this, but just to give you an aerial context, it is on East Shore, so we have the freeway here and Golden Gate Fields and USDA here, so it is in our commercial mixed-use area. This is the street view, and this is the garden center that is proposed to be demolished as part of the project scope. This is the facade alteration that, if approved, that portion of the facade would be restored to match the existing building traits. Just to give you a breakdown of the parking, the existing store footprint and the garden center are just over 175,000 square feet. Based on our code of a 1 space per 400 requirement, this resulted in a requirement of 438 parking spaces. At the time of construction, Target intentionally overparked the site at a ratio of 1 space per 340 square feet. So they exceeded our baseline requirements by 78 parking spaces, and that's the conditions that exist currently. Under the proposed application request, the store footprint would be reduced to just over 167,000 square feet. This would, based on our requirement of 1 space per 400 square feet, that's a 418 parking space requirement. They've provided for 376 spaces in what they characterize as their primary field, which is the area immediately in front of the store. The other portion of the site that they consider their field lot, I believe, is closer to the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center. So based on this, they would be reducing the requirement by 42 parking spaces. The resultant parcel that would be part of the tentative parcel map has 160 off-street spaces that's provided for in that remote field area. So it's kind of moving the lines around, but ultimately it is the reduction for the 42 parking spaces. You did receive 2 items of correspondence, which were forwarded to you both yesterday and today. Those emails are from AC Transit, and then it was a joint letter that was signed by 7 Albany residents that was sent to you this morning. Just to kind of give the commission a little background, and as well as the audience, AC Transit had requested the consideration and inclusion of a condition of approval, which would require Target to conduct a feasibility analysis to extend their service, accommodate bus staging, as well as on-site bus circulation, roadway circulation, and passenger accessibility to the site. Staff had some initial concerns about this request and conferred with our legal counsel regarding nexus and rough proportionality issues, as well as condition enforcement. Kind of the biggest concern is that if this were to be included, this would potentially put the Planning Commission in a difficult position in the event that there were disagreements between AC Transit and Target. It's a bit of an open-ended condition, and we wouldn't want to put you in a position where you're having to mediate and enforce your own condition that, you know, it has a little bit of gray area.
Was that council's sort of perspective on it, or input?
Our legal counsel, yes,
Okay.
yeah. In the letter that you received, and I'm going to defer some of this to the applicant, but there were several points that were identified. The first of which was supporting the AC Transit letter, which we've just discussed. There was also discussion of requiring Target to prepare a transportation demand management plan. An additional request for short and long-term bicycle parking, and I did talk to Target about that, both that and electric vehicle charging stations. They're happy to comply with those should you choose to include those as conditions of approval. They also requested a designated rideshare taxi drop-off zone, as well as additional demands for parking lot space, and I will defer some of that to the applicant to explain their position on that. The project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301, existing facilities of CEQA. And with that, just again, we are asking you to review this and provide feedback to the applicant and staff this evening. We will be bringing this back to you at a future date, so you are not taking any action tonight. You're simply holding the hearing, receiving testimony, and providing feedback.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have one, which is with respect to the bike parking, as well as, I guess, the electric vehicle parking. So if this project was being newly proposed today, would the amount of parking, or the bike parking that is provided at the site currently comply with our code requirements, or are they below what we would require today?
I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say that they're probably below our new
Okay.
bike parking requirements.
Okay. And presumably, we probably didn't have electric vehicle requirements, or I don't even know actually if we do now. Just admit my ignorance about that.
Yeah, in 2004, it was much different than what we have now.
Sure.
But certainly, when we come back to you, we can provide an analysis of that
Okay.
you know, depicts the building footprint with our current bike parking requirements.
Okay.
And I don't remember getting the AC Transit letter, but I'll take your word for what it was. And also, we have a letter tonight from Friends of Five Creeks on this project, too, that was just handed out. So,
Yeah, I actually
And I have a
just,
speaker card, too.
but I did get the letter from the group of citizens, so, yeah.
I was also just emailing you guys that I didn't get the AC Transit letter
I didn't
either, so.
Was that- I just assumed that was part of the
Okay.
same letter as the group of citizens. They signed it, did they not? Wasn't AC Transit on that one?
Yeah. No, here's a copy of it. No, I haven't seen this, but, okay.
AC Transit staff was copied on the email from the Albany residents, but they provided a letter on their letterhead independent of that.
I just had one follow-up question on the AC Transit one. Was the request from AC Transit for Target to just conduct a feasibility study? And that's the request for the condition, or for them to actually implement the results of the feasibility study?
It's a little bit open-ended.
Okay.
It's a feasibility study request, but it does go into greater detail as to expectations of what that would include.
Okay.
But one thing to note, it doesn't identify, you know, if they were to extend the service, what, you know, that's really up to AC Transit, how they implement that. But as far as who would pay for the infrastructure, that's not identified in the letter.
And sorry, one more question. I realize that tentative parcel map is not before us tonight, but just to get the lay of the land for the overall proposal, how big would the second parcel be, the new parcel that would be
The second
created?
parcel would be about an acre.
Okay.
And there's no building footprint shown yet for the second the second parcel is designed so to have possibly a building that would go up for additional retail.
Yeah, the idea is that once the parcel is subdivided from the rest of the property, Target would sell that off
Then-
independent of their business, and there would be a future use that would go through an entitlement
It needs to be
process.
sold off. I thought it was, okay. All right. Any more questions? So we'll reach out to the public. Any questions,
Well, can we hear from the architect or
Oh, yeah,
from
thank you.
Target? I'd like to hear from Target.
the owner or the architect for the
Yeah.
project? Please.
That'd be great.
Hi, my name's Greg Friel. I'm with PLS Partners. We're representing Target. We appreciate your consideration in all of this, and I think the planner did an excellent job of presenting the project, so I'll just trying to address some of the issues with regards to the AC Transit letter and the neighborhood letter that we just received today. We do not feel as though AC Transit is the appropriate use on our site. The layout of the parking lot is not such that we can accommodate bus transportation, bus turning radiuses and stacking for the 2 buses that they've asked for. But we would certainly support if the bus route was ever extended down to East Shore Highway, that we would cooperate with them in putting an enhanced bus stop. And we already provide accessible circulation from the frontage there to the front of the store. We're just not quite sure that having parking spacing for 2 buses on site would be something we could accommodate and willing. We also doubt that there's the demand from the store just as for the terminal there on its own. As far as the neighborhood letter, we're very supportive of everything, but we do have some issues with some of the things they are asking for. The traffic demand study, Target does on an annual basis a review of about 10% of their stores for what parking needs are based on population, income, store volumes, any number of things, and then they rate their stores, and they do a survey of about 10% of their stores based on those typical type stores, so that they figure out what their parking needs are, and their whole intent is that they provide enough parking that you have a good experience there and that you're not fighting for a parking space or they're significantly underparked or anything like that. So they wouldn't be asking for the reduction if they felt it was going to hurt their business in any way. We have no problem supporting additional bike parking on the site or electrical vehicle charging stations. We are part of a program that provides those at all of our stores. We just haven't gotten to this store yet. So if there was a request to have them installed, we could certainly incorporate that into the plan. And we certainly have enough space on the front of the store to add more bike parking. We would ask, though, that we not be required to install bike lockers. We've had some pretty unpleasant experiences with people using them for anything other than storage of bicycles. So we'd be glad to provide covered parking and screen parking with a screen structure as part of the overhead structure, but we would rather not have to put bike lockers on if we could. We are not supportive of a designated drop-off taxi zone. We find that they tend to clog up the drive aisles with people just parking their car, well, someone running into the store and the person in the car leaving their car there running and compromising the circulation through the site. So we'd rather that, people use the store now with Uber and Lyft and taxis, and they don't need to have a designated parking zone for them. They work quite fine, so we don't feel the need for that. And I think that's basically it. Maybe I could answer questions and clarify some things for you more.
Do you have any idea how many, do you think, could you poll your employees to see if they would use the bus if you had it? It seems to me like a natural.
I think if it was there, they would probably use it, yes.
Yeah.
But to have it on site, I don't think it makes it any more attractive than having it along East Shore Highway.
Yeah. Okay, but it would be nice to, I think it would be great to, I was impressed with the letter from the people. I think it's a great idea to route the 18 bus down toward Target, and I think that it would
We
be
have no
good for
problem with
everybody.
that, but we just
Yeah.
do have a problem with trying to make bus turning radiuses in a parking lot that's not designed for it.
Yeah.
Just to park the two buses, we'd probably be losing 15 to 20 stalls.
15 to 20 stalls, you think?
Right. They're asking for about 120-foot length of area to park a bus, and the way the parking lot's laid out, there really isn't anywhere to do that without removing more parking.
Yeah.
I'd also point out, we have no precedent for requiring bus stops on private property elsewhere in the city. We've never had that before.
Right, right. Yeah.
I have a question or two. I saw the number counts for the parking, but in terms of the plans, it's very ambiguous to figure out where exactly the new spots are and where the spots that are going to be removed are located.
Okay.
So if you could clarify that for me, and I think it would be nice in the next time we review this to be able to discern that from.
I think I can clarify that for you now. The 160 that are going away are all on the out parcel on the north side of the creek. And then the
There you
new
go.
stalls are all within the area where the garden center is being removed. If you look at sheet 3 or sheet 4, you can see where we are just basically, we're removing the existing garden center and the existing sidewalks, making a new fairly narrow sidewalk and transitioning to the existing plaza area, and then filling in the rest as much as we can with parking and bio retention area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
All that surplus.
okay, so so I get the garden center location
Right.
spots, and I just sort of visually looking at it, I counted like 14 spots. So I guess I
No,
wasn't
there's
sure.
21.
There's 21 in that garden.
Yeah.
Okay, because when I looked at the old plan versus the new one, I didn't count 21 new spots, but,
Okay.
all right, I'll have to double check that. And so then you said the ones that are being removed are all part of the overflow lot at the north end?
Correct.
Are they, and do you know, can you point out specifically like which section or area of that?
Pretty much everywhere from here, this is the target parcel line,
Okay.
so it'd be this whole,
Oh, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
which gets very little use.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, and then, and you also said that you'd be amenable to additional bike, not lockers,
Storage area?
or bike
Yeah.
racks?
Yes, definitely.
And do you have any idea where you would think those would go?
On the front plaza area, we have opportunities here to incorporate them into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Convenient to the front of the store.
okay. I guess those are my only questions right now.
I can go. So just with respect to the parking reduction, the staff report talks about, and you touched on, the data collection and analysis that shows you'll have plenty of parking. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, and, what do you think is going to be the typical demand on like an average Saturday, or like on the Saturday before Christmas, or whatever, I don't know what metrics you use, but I'm just curious if you can provide a little more data, and this might be like just when it comes back to us.
I'm afraid I'd have to, because I don't
Okay,
have that with me.
that's fine.
I do know that the Saturday before Christmas is unreasonable.
Sure.
Parking demand is never met, no matter how much we have.
Sure.
But yes, I could definitely get something a little more on how those are measured and what is taken into consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because in general, I mean, I'm inclined to support the parking reduction, but I think I just want know a little
Okay.
bit more about how this specific number is going to work.
Part of it is the amount of online shopping, and Target has instituted a program where you can pull up and they will run out with your order loaded into your car, and then you leave. So the demand for parking is greatly reduced by that, because you might spend 3 minutes in a parking stall where you would have spent 20 minutes or so if you had to go into the store. So, and then there are a lot of other issues that come up with parking it's no longer the issue that it once was with retail. So, but I
Yeah,
will
no,
get
I
you.
think just understanding a little bit
Yeah.
better about why, 438 works versus, 500 or versus 400,
Okay.
just understanding
Right.
just a little more data to support
Okay.
the number that's being requested.
Has the rear lot's hardly ever been used whenever I've been down there. I've never seen a car in it. Is it overparked? Is that indication that it's overparked mean that the store is not as successful as Target was
No,
hoping?
the store is extremely successful. It's just the
Really?
nature of retail since when the store was built in 2004, I believe it is, and now, I'm sure you all use Amazon and have stuff delivered to your home. Target has the same program.
Yeah.
There are many options to getting stuff that you don't need to go to the store anymore, but this is one of their more successful stores. It's just the demand for parking is not what it once was.
So your parking analysis, you're going to meet the 8th worst day or 8th worst hour of the year. And I forget, when I was doing my site, I forgot to look at what the parking restrictions are on the East Shore Highway, but sort of what's your overflow strategy if the lot fills up?
There's a cross-access agreement so that we will be able to continue to use that, or there will be in place once it's subdivided. There'll be a cross-access agreement that if and when it should be needed, we will have the right to park there, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's usually
So
how these,
you would sell that lot with
Right.
conditions on it? Uh-huh.
yes.
Of course, the risk is that they fill up on Christmas Eve also.
Well,
We don't have a use, so we don't know what's going to go in there, so,
you don't know what the use is
Yeah.
going to be, yeah. Okay,
And,
okay.
sorry, and just one kind of follow-up question. I feel like I have to ask, similar to Commissioner Jennings' question, would you and/or the applicant be willing to share your metrics and feasibility studies for
I
this?
can ask Target for that, yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Commissioner Wani?
I guess the only other question that I would have is if AC Transit were to provide a stop on East Shore, would Target be amenable to, it looks like the current sort of pedestrian access from East Shore isn't stellar and is a little roundabout. Would they be open to, looking
Yes.
at additional
Right,
direct access?
they would be open to providing a bus shelter and enhancing the access to the store. I mean, but there is a path now, and there isn't even service out there, but yes, definitely, they would work with AC Transit. They're just not quite convinced that the onus for bus circulation should be on their site. Yeah.
One last question.
Have you had a chance to review the letter we just received from Friends of Five Creeks, or have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay, okay. We'll call you back then.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, related to that, a follow-up question about what sort of actions or programs Target has implemented, I don't know if you can answer this, in terms of maintaining the creeks that are on the property.
I couldn't answer that. All I could tell you is that we are incorporating bioretention methods to clean up the stormwater that probably flows into them, so we should be having cleaner water going into the storm system that I would assume it eventually drops into the creek. But as far as any programs they have ongoing with those, I can't answer that. I'm not.
Okay. Thank you.
If you rebuild, or you do add these parking spaces, then will that trigger compliance with the relatively new sort of C3 requirements?
Yes,
And would that affect the entire parking lot or just the 21 spaces?
just the 21 spaces and the driving access aisles around them.
Oh, just that? huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it shouldn't make any change because you're,
What?
I don't know if it makes much change because you have an impervious surface that you're taking down and replacing with.
We are removing and replacing.
So there's not much.
That is,
I see.
that's, if we were just laying asphalt over the top of it or patching and sealing, it wouldn't apply. But because we have to remove the slab that the garden center is on now, we exceed the 5,000 square feet and we have to comply. Went down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I,
One more question.
sorry, could I ask one more question,
question.
sir?
We have one more question for you, Greg.
Sorry. So I know the application is also for design review, and so just with respect to the design review component of what we're looking at, it looks to me like the design is basically just, remove what's
Pretty
there
much,
and
yeah.
extend the
Yeah.
storefront. I'm not an expert at reading the plans, but I was curious about the landscaping that might be in front of the store, because, it's going to be just kind of a big unbroken expanse of wall.
Right.
And I was just curious if you could talk a little about the landscaping.
Well, we're
plan that
putting
would be
in
proposed.
new end islands on the parking lot, and there's a landscape planter in the rounded corner of the plaza area, and there'll be trees in there to sort of block to filter the view from someone in the parking lot. We don't have a lot of opportunities for landscaping, unfortunately, but we are planning on putting some trees in to sort of break up the mass of that wall.
Okay.
Speaking of that, so that little triangle right where the garden is on the sidewalk side of the
This
building,
is
that's
the landscape plan. There are 3 palm trees along here. We're going to put in a 4th. Just to continue what's existing.
So if I could make a request for when this comes back to us, I think it would be really helpful to see on a rendering just the, any of the trees or landscaping
Okay.
that
I will ask
appears
the
in the front of
architects
it.
to do that.
Okay. Now I'm really done.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, we have one public speaker card, and that is Susan Schwartz.
I'm Susan Schwartz, the head of Friends of Five Creeks. We're a 23-year-old all-volunteer group working on watersheds from Berkeley to Richmond. We've been involved in Codornices Creek for all of that time, and with Target since before it was built. It's a rather sad story. We would urge you to consider, in any dealings with Target, making sure that it complies with its use permit requirement, which is clearly in your records, that it maintain Codornices Creek, our only trout stream, adjacent to its property. Over the years, repeatedly, we have had to pressure the city of Albany, and it was not easy to pressure the city of Albany to get them to enforce this requirement. The most recent was 2016. At that time, Target posted the conservation areas, which are on the pictures on the back of your letter, and for a time did a better job. This is not an uncommon pattern with businesses that have requirements with natural areas. They slip after a few years. We would like to see a more permanent partnership with Albany, including Albany Police, the city of Berkeley, which has much worse problems on the other side of the creek, and Target, to avoid the very serious conditions that exist now and will recur. It's not always going to be a Friends of Five Creeks to come in and make trouble. The camps now are on both sides of the creek. There are certainly hundreds of pounds of litter, including large shipping pallets. Rainy season is imminent. We have had rains at this time of year. If that trash washed to the culvert, there is a serious danger of a flood that would affect at least the business that is to the west of Target, and potentially a great deal more. More seriously, because there is now a heavy-duty fence at the railroad, a fence on the Berkeley side, and a tall fence on the Target side. Anyone sleeping in that area, quite likely to be drunk, high, or otherwise, or nuts, let's be honest, could drown. I don't know if you realize how quickly urban creeks can rise in a storm. This is not a light matter. We have been pressing Berkeley. They, I understand, have a cleanup that is now imminent, maybe next week, Target and Albany, if you're not now working with Berkeley, should be working on that. There should be an ongoing partnership to not have these recurrent, extremely expensive cleanups followed by the situation recurring. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all those comments. So we'll bring the discussion back to the commission. Anyone like to start?
Sure. I actually just had one follow-up question on that. What was the condition of approval from the original relating to the creek?
I need to go back in our records and locate the original use permit to find out what specifically was required.
Maybe for next time, it would be helpful to get a sense of what all their previous conditions of approval were, and maybe a breakdown of sort of compliance, non-compliance, and just information would be helpful.
Yep, definitely.
I agree.
I guess aside from that, I'll just sort of opine on my thoughts here. From the design review perspective, I'm kind of agnostic on it. I mean, would this be, if we were talking about the brand new store, I would have very different thoughts, but knowing that the interior program is set and this is a relatively small proposal relative to the existing store's current operations, I get what they're doing. It seems to make sense in terms of the new treatment that will be on there. I don't think there's really opportunity to add increased glazing, for example, because I think that's where the pharmacy back of house is and the Starbucks back of house is. It seems like it's a lot of back of house. And so a solid wall it seems to make the most sense to me. I actually didn't even realize that parking lot on the other side was even part of Target, to be perfectly honest. I thought it was a separate, discrete parcel all the times I've driven there. So I think that's very telling in terms of usability. I think it makes sense for them to recoup the garden center and repurpose it with extra parking. I would be supportive of the increased bike parking and to accommodate bike facilities that can accommodate, the larger bikes and all that sort of thing. So I do think there are some folks who may take advantage of that, as well as the electric vehicle charging stations. As it relates to AC Transit, I do think it would be great if AC Transit came down on East Shore Highway, but I do agree that I don't think it's appropriate to mandate AC Transit extension onto private property. If AC Transit did provide a stop, it seems like the one close to the entrance, right, where the cars turn in. I would ask that Target work collaboratively to really design that in a very thoughtful, welcoming way so that it doesn't feel sort of like a third-class citizen approach to the facility, but a very welcoming use of public transit. And it seems like that's something that Target is willing to undertake should AC Transit provide the service down there. But I'm not inclined to ask for that as any kind of condition of approval when we get to it next round. And I don't know, those are all of my thoughts on it.
Thank you.
I'm in agreement basically with everything Commissioner Waddy said, including that I had no idea that extra parking was part of Target. Based on my observations as a frequent shopper at this store, have never seen the parking lot near capacity. And so it doesn't strike me that there is a parking constraint that would prevent us from approving this. Like I said, I would like a little more info to be comfortable with it, but I'm inclined to support the parking reduction. And I agree that it would be nice to see additional bike and electric vehicle parking, as well as cooperation if AC Transit does extend down East Shore Highway. But I also don't think it's appropriate to mandate a bike or a bus parking or turnaround area on the property. And more generally, I think it seems like a great opportunity to create an additional commercial use on that parcel. I know, again, we'll be hearing this again, and we don't have a particular development proposal, but I don't think that unused parking is the best use of that site. So I'm supportive.
Thank you.
If you may, so I would somewhat concur with the other two commissioners. I think the design sort of is what it is in terms of it being a big box store. I would definitely strongly encourage the inclusion of additional bike parking even if it's just with bike racks. And I would also sort of encourage the applicant to try to meet, I think as Commissioner Waddy and Jennings were getting at, meeting our current requirements in terms of bike locker, bike racks quantity and also electrical vehicle parking. And I'm going to go even further and say that if I would like to see that somehow incorporated into the drawings that are presented. And the part that I'm going to go a little bit further on is, I know when I bike ride and it's raining out, I hate to have to park my bike in the rain, getting wet, and then come back to a wet bike. So even if it's something like a simple sort of cantilevered roof over the bike racks that would give a little bit of protection, I think would be a nice added benefit. And then in terms of the creek, I would like to, I guess I would like to hear from staff in terms of what's required and staff's sort of perception as to what the current status is, whether they're in compliance or not. And then depending on that input, kind of address that issue if possible. And I guess, I guess those are generally my comments.
Thank you.
My initial reaction to the project was that this was a good project and appropriate. The garden center has been empty, and I think it's fine to remove it from the store. The back lot doesn't get much use, and I can understand why Target would want to surplus that. It's an important asset in Albany, and I want to be favorable to Target. That being said, I'm very intrigued by the letters we've received here, and I don't take them. I take them with great strength. I'm surprised the city attorney said we might have a nexus problem here. It seems to me that if Target is giving, we are going to give up 160 spaces, parking spaces on the one side, that it would be totally a complete nexus, a total connection for us to be able to require bus access. It seems to me we should be able to do that. So I think there's a nexus there between what they want and what we can require. And so I'm intrigued by AC Transit's idea that, yes, let's extend our bus service down there. I think it would help Target, in fact. I bet that employees would use the bus to get to work and take some cars off the road in doing that. So it bothers me that we have apparently these institutional kind of constraints, AC Transit's constraints, the City of Albany's constraints, not wanting to require bus stops on private property, Target's constraints of not wanting to cooperate with AC Transit to try to work it out. I think it could be worked out, and I think that bus access onto the site somehow would be possible, and that would be the ideal solution in my thinking. And then the Friends of Five Creeks letters, I have been down there. I have walked back there, not for a year or more, but it can be pretty bad. I completely appreciate Susan's concerns about that. And there are homeless encampments back there behind UC Village, and it can be pretty sketchy. There's cut holes, wire cuts in the fence, and you crawl back there and everything like that. But there is it's not good. That's where some of our homeless went, and some of them are there, and there are encampments. And Susan is right. If there's a flood, there could be some deaths down there, I think. So I think that that condition of approval needs to be looked at very closely. And finally, the creek there is so overgrown. Susan might know more than I do about it. It looks to me like it's too thick, too dense, and I don't know what responsibilities Target, if any, has for maintaining that easement where the creek runs through their property. But if they have some management responsibilities there, I want to see them live up to it, and maybe make it into a better creek habitat, a better stormway anyway, or creekway. So, I don't know. So those are my comments. I'm probably can support the project, but I really do have some concerns, and I really wish that something were going on here that could move this forward to have this opportunity to extend that 18 bus line down to East Shore State Highway, down to the East Shore Highway, which would not only improve access to Target with transit, but perhaps other businesses along there as well. I don't know. Those are my comments. Look forward to having it come back and see what the next iteration is like. But talk to your folks at Target about, and have the transportation planners look and see, hey, could we benefit from transit here? And if so, talk with AC Transit and work up an agreement with them. That'd be great. It'd be just great. Yeah.
To kind of follow up on Commissioner Nellison's comment, I think it would also help me just in terms of looking at the project and understanding what's going on if, as I said earlier, to sort of clarify the new parking versus the existing, but also in your drawing to identify any of the ecological programs like the bioswales that you referenced so that I can know exactly where those are located and to what extent Target has done to the site rather than just purely the parking being shown on the plans.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of going to echo many of the comments made. I think I like the project. I like the idea of reduced parking and perhaps more retail and more building and less parking. Can't object to that. The other peripheral elements I think need to be addressed. The idea of bringing bus down there makes perfect sense because the 18 just sits there and idles at University Village for 20 minutes. It could easily just come down here, do a loop and come back, but I understand the physical constraints. But there does seem to be some excess space that I don't know how it could be worked, a hammerhead design or something, but I'll leave that up to the designers. I think that would be really well used. I might use it too. With regards to the creek, yeah, I emailed Ann to see if you could dig up that stuff, and I guess it must be hard to find or something. But I do recall a little bit, and I know that if nothing else, Target's responsible for cleaning up trash on the property, and they did a very good job within the fence limits. But outside the fence limits, given it's probably a lot, it's harder because they had to open the fence and get in there, and they have less control of that. But it is their property, and it is their responsibility, and they really not done much on it. I went down there this morning and looked at it, and the photographs don't even come close to what it really looks like in there. There are holes, just like you say, Doug. People come and go through there. And in several places like Cerrito Creek, where it fronts up against Pacific East Mall, there's a trash issue there, which is constantly getting on Pacific East Mall about. And then they come down and do some kind of crazy mowing of everything and wipe out all the work that the restorers did. So there's this balance, you want it cleaned up. And then if you remember the history of the El Cerrito Plaza, before we did the restoration there, that was the parking came right up to the edge of the creek, and it was concrete, and everything was just dumped into the creek. So there's a long history of box retail that just kind of ignores the creek. So we're really super sensitive about this issue where the store is so inward focused, they treat the outer part as kind of a nuisance, and it's really part of the community. And so we'd like to see Target come a little bit more on board with that. The issue Susan mentioned about safety too, if we have that sign on there that says conservation easement, it might have a sign, in case of emergency, call these numbers, so that the employees have some way that, there might be a fair amount of turnover there, and maybe the education's losing, but if you put it on a sign right on the fence, maintain outside this fence, call this number if the people are giving, some kind of easy communication for the employees to know what to do with that open space. I think it does need to be cleaned out because as creeks, naturally, they plug up and they cause flooding, right? So we don't want that to happen. So we need to get in there and clean it up. I think that's, and thank you for bringing up the landscape. I was kind of focused on the creek.
Been listening
But
to
yeah,
you.
I do think it's a little bit of a yawn that now you take the garden center is kind of attractive. You take that out and you have the same facade you have on the on the west side, which is kind of this repetitious. So a little, I think you're thinking about that, but it's not shown in the sections, so seeing that would be useful. Any more comments? Anyone? So with that, I think we've just given you some direction to, and in general, I think we like the idea. We'd just like to see other things brought up to speed on it. Appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, planning application 18063, conditional use permit, design review and signage for 578 Cleveland Avenue, Chef's Touch. Could you do a project
Yes.
description?
Good evening. Once again, this is another study session item before you tonight. This is conditional use permit, design review, and signage for 578 Cleveland, Chef's Touch. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 62,400 square foot lot with an existing 25,189 square foot building built in 1948 and then substantially added to in 1973. City records show the following work done to the property. The aforementioned addition, which was a 39-foot by 222 square foot addition back in 1973, storage/office modification in the same year, temporary shoring, excavation, restoration of a column, fire repairs for a roof deck, drywall, electrical, and one light post installation. Some more background. Most recently, the building was occupied by El Cerrito Tires, who occupied the building from 2013 to 2017. The commission reviewed and approved PA 13029, a conditional use permit to allow that business. Here's the street view of the property as it sits today. And project request. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to allow a commercial kitchen, which would be Chef's Touch commercial kitchen, a restaurant/cafe use for Wicked Cow Barbecue, and food truck parking areas. The applicant is also seeking design review for a new storefront entry design, metal siding, enclosures of the existing windows, wall screening for rooftop equipment. No changes to the building area or footprint are proposed under this project scope. And additionally, they're requesting review of this proposed signage. 3 wall-mounted signs are proposed on the exterior of the building to accommodate the new businesses. And right here is the proposed site plan. I believe the architect actually has a new plan set that may be slightly modified, but this is what was presented to us. Here's an existing elevation of the property. And here's what's proposed. Note the double entry, double doors, and side lights and window modifications. Conditional use permit. All uses in the commercial mixed-use zoning district require a conditional use permit and review through the Planning and Zoning Commission. Just to clarify the use in the zoning code, this is a general industrial use, which states that it's manufacturing of products primarily from or extracted of raw materials or bulk storage, handling of such products and materials. This classification includes food processing and packaging, stonework, concrete product manufacturing, forging, stamping, power generation, sawmills, and paper manufacturing as well. Conditional use permit. This is the table from the zoning code that shows that a use permit is required within the zoning district, the CMX zone. The applicant is also proposing off-street parking for 60 food trucks that will be on-site off hours. The food trucks are not proposed to operate on-site. The business hours are proposed to be Monday through Friday, so 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Design review facade modifications. The applicant is proposing to modify the exterior of the existing warehouse structure. These modifications include removing the exterior windows on the south and east side of the structure, a new storefront entry system to include 2 double doors and side lights, and rooftop equipment to accommodate the proposed businesses, along with wall screening for aesthetic purposes. The applicant is also proposing new signage. 3 wall-mounted signs are proposed for Chef's Touch, and the signage looks like what's shown on the screen. And signage is proposed on the north, east, and west sides of the building. Parking. The zoning code requires one parking space per 1,000 square feet for industry general uses. The subject area is 25,189 square feet, thus requiring 25 off-street parking spaces for the proposed uses. The applicant is proposing to accommodate approximately 60 off-street parking spaces. Food trucks are proposed to utilize the parking lot after 7 p.m., and patron vehicles will utilize the parking during regular business hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. again. Staff has received one correspondence voicing concerns about air pollution generated by the proposed business uses. It was included in the staff report attachments. The staff recommends that the proposed project be considered categorically exempt from the requirements of CEQA per section 15332 infill development projects. And recommendations. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review the proposed plans and provide feedback to the applicant and staff. A reminder that this is a study session item and no action will be taken. And then just an additional note, the project architect has a more updated plan set to show the commission.
Thank you.
Actually, that was one of my questions. Just looking at the plan set and the staff report, it's in the agenda. Would you mind going back to the proposed elevation, south elevation? Yeah, just because that looks different than what's the plan set.
Yeah, staff received revised plans after the packet had went out, and then additionally, more revised plans are prepared for today.
Okay, so that's the more accurate.
That's the most accurate that staff got before, while we were making the presentation, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then maybe, I guess when the applicant comes to speak, I guess if they could just clarify, because the drawings I see have the screening at the upper floor for the mechanical, and so I guess I just wanted to, versus it's not shown there, and the signage is slightly different, so.
Chris, there's a truck wash facility. Is that recycling the water? What's the?
I'm not familiar. I would defer to the applicant for that question, actually.
And the other question was, I don't see any kind of stormwater treatment here, but it looks like a lot of new paving. And
We've informed the applicant that C3 compliance is required as part of the project. So it is a requirement as part of the approval and permitting.
This is a minor question, but on page 4 of the staff report, it says the cafe's business hours are proposed to be Monday through Friday, parentheses, 7 days a week. So which of those,
Sorry.
I think
which of those is right?
Might have been 7. It's 5 days a week, but I think 7 a.m. to
Monday,
7
Friday,
p.m.,
okay.
yeah.
One other question about the signage. What's the signage exactly going to be? Is it directly illuminated, indirectly illuminated?
We'll defer to the
Acrylic.
applicant on that.
Okay.
That hasn't been specified. One thing to note, though, for the commission's benefit, all signage in CMX is subject to architectural review, so you have pretty wide discretion in terms of how you review and provide feedback to the applicant.
Okay, good. Do we have any experience with food preparation down in the CMX zone? Do I vaguely recall that Semi Freddy's had a bakery down there in the past? No?
I don't think so.
No, it may have been a long time ago then, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know. Yeah, all right.
have they started doing any work out there? It looks like that parking strip, they're already preparing the building for a backfill of some sort.
I'll let the applicant explain.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? Could the applicant come up and present the project?
Hello, good evening. My name is Ron Huber. I'm the architect for the project. I've just been with this project for a couple of weeks, so I apologize if some of the information is not up to date. We are updating all the information, and some of the changes that we've done can be seen even in this elevation, where instead of showing some steps or stairs, we're accommodating a ramp for accessibility from the street to the entrance to the restaurant. And that can be seen on the right-hand side of the elevation.
These are all the renderings that we have for,
Okay. So we have asking questions, is that,
Yeah.
are you gonna, oh, here's a set, okay.
So then, correct me if I'm wrong, sir. My understanding then of the most current design, I think I received something in my email today that has no screening at the upper floor for the mechanical.
Right, right. I think that in the original design, it was conceived as having a lot of equipment up on the roof, but our latest understanding from the engineering side is that there's only about 3 compressors that we go on the east side of the roof. So we feel that if screening those equipment is actually going to be more noticeable than just having a 3x3 piece of equipment on top of the roof, but we're certainly open to consider if that's requested.
No, I appreciate that. And then also, assuming these are the most current drawings, it looks like the signage, rather than being mounted on the elevation or facade of the building, is going to be more of a freestanding sign that's mounted on top of the building?
Well, perhaps I took the liberty of interpreting the client's thoughts and placed that one on the top, because that way we could have just one sign, in a sense, physically speaking, that could be seen from both highways. So that would probably mean that we would only have 2 signs, one on the top and one on the front.
Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Oh, and then I guess I'm following up on Commissioner Wadi's question. Would the signs be directly illuminated by some sort and sort of uplighted or downlighted or no lighting at all?
Well, very likely I would say some sort of indirect lighting that would certainly not protrude or come out of the area or shine into somebody's path. Just illuminate the sign itself. We haven't really solved that one 100%, so I could not give you a 100% answer yet, but we'll certainly take into consideration whatever your concerns are regarding that issue.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So this is strictly, I mean, it's not retail. People, this is, who can come in here and buy this? Anybody? Or
The place actually has different uses. So one of them is the commercial kitchen that is only for the tenants that would be using. So there's no public involved there. And the other one is the restaurant, which has a separate entrance on the south side where it's public. Anybody could go in there.
and where would they park?
Well, what
Is it all
happens...
truck parking stalls they can park?
Okay, what happens is that the trucks park at nighttime and they leave at 6 in the morning approximately. The restaurant opens at 7 and they come back at around 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night when the restaurant is closed. So we're optimizing the use of the parking.
And the people that drive their trucks, I mean, they're driving there to get they're not living there, so they're driving to get their truck. They park their car and then drive the truck away.
Right. Well, they bring the truck, drop it off, and I'm not sure how they get back home, if that's the question.
Yeah, I guess that's my question, because it seems like every truck has an owner, so every truck
Right.
has another car associated with it. And
Well, that's a very good question. I guess we could assume certain scenarios that could solve that one, such as public transportation or somebody bringing them, picking them up. So therefore, the need for additional parking, as I understand your question, could be sufficed in
well,
that
there's
manner.
about 10, 15 spots on the street,
Right.
which could help. Yeah, I don't know, maybe something you gotta look at, how that's gonna work.
I agree.
Sure.
I had the same, it says in write-up that your employees would come at 3 a.m. and start working to get ready for the trucks to go out. And my question was, where would those employees park? Because the trucks will be all filling a lot at 3 a.m., so. Yeah, I think you need a lot more thought on how to manage the parking.
Right, and it's a very valid question. Nevertheless, I understand the owner is in negotiations with the neighbor that has a large parking lot that could make it available during the times that he's not using them to suffice that need. Sorry, satisfy that need.
I want to say, I think it's a really cool business. I haven't said that.
Oh, yeah.
Say, why didn't I think of that anyway? But anyway, yeah, but there's a lot, I think you're designing this, so a lot of little issues kind of popped up, and you mentioned some of the other ones. So you are filling now up against the building? Is that what's happening?
Well, not against the building. What happens is that we're using a product which is Celcrete, which is a light concrete, And therefore, if you can assume that we have an area of about approximately 14 feet wide, which is shown in yellow, that is approximately 5 feet deep at the tallest part to zero, and that infill acts as a retaining wall per se. So therefore, there's no push against the building. There's no forces, and we have the engineering that demonstrates that.
Oh, okay. But it will go up against the building, so that's why the waterproofing's put there.
Correct, yes.
So do you need a permit for that, or that's,
You need a permit for
oh,
that.
then you have a permit for that?
Yes.
No,
No?
no, no permit has not been issued.
Oh, I see, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the question was we need? Yes, we do need.
You got ahead of yourself there a little bit, I guess.
True.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it does have one residence, probably the coolest residence, and all the food right below you.
Yeah, talk about that residence.
This was an existing facility, an existing residence on the site that was used by someone, perhaps a keeper. And the owner is proposing renovating that one and making it habitable for his own use the times that he cannot go back home because of too much work, too much late, too much traffic.
Got it.
Okay.
All right.
I had just a couple other questions too. So in the staff report, it says that this is a takeout cafe. I was just hoping you could maybe elaborate a little bit on what the actual business plan is, because the floor plans show 50 plus seats on the ground floor, plus the entire upstairs that's called out as like a lounge and dining area. And there's a full bar with seating at the bar. And there's brewery and all of that. It seems to me to be more of like a brew pub and with a pretty significant capacity, which to me is not the same as just like a takeout cafe, what I would picture as a takeout cafe. So which is it?
Well, I think that the takeout cafe concept is, at this point, not the one that is being considered. It's more of a restaurant and brewery, per se, and the idea being that people, of course, could, at the same time, take out some of the food as they wanted to, but there's also sitting outside in the patio. So, and that is what we see as the complement of the other spaces in the building.
Sorry, if I could just ask one follow-up to that. Would it be an actual brewery on site or just more of a tap room, like making beer there?
I'm not an expert in this area. For what I understand from the owner is that what happens there is that they actually buy the pre-made beer to some extent. It's sort of like a Coca-Cola formula to some extent, where you buy the containers, you got the water, and then you put the gas in, and then you sell it. So it's not an actual brewery. It's more of a dispenser of beer.
Okay,
That's my understanding, but I'm not 100%.
okay.
Sure, can you come, so you'll be on the, they can't hear you on the phone, so if you come up here and talk to the speaker, that'd be great. Just to clarify. Yeah.
So we have a large building. Can't develop the whole thing at one time. So the idea is catering is going to be our major business on the Wicked Cow. So it'll be a lot of delivery to the refineries, restaurants, and so forth. Then it'll be a Kinder's type of a barbecue where you can come in and do takeout. Later on, I would like to develop the brew concept using a new product called Smart Brew, where this company makes the wort, which is your beginning process of beer, delivers that to us, and then we would have fermenters on site that actually dispense the beer. It makes the final stage of the beer. So it's half of a brewery, okay, but it's more economical that way. And that'll be later on. It's nothing that I can afford to do all this stuff at one time. The upstairs, what I like to do is get it built, because now's the opportunity to get it built. And then later on, we can look at it as a meeting room. You could do so many things upstairs. You could do an art festival, you could do an art show, you could do a play, you could do a lot of things. It'll be a big event center, basically. And then we'll decide what the best use is for Albany and what people are looking for. Then we can come back and say, hey, this would be a great idea to do upstairs. Okay, that's kind of the concept. So I hate to piecemeal all this stuff, but I can't afford a $150,000 elevator and a $150,000 brewery. I want to get the restaurants open. That's my first task at hand, is get this thing generating income. There's a correction. There is no off-site parking. It said in the plan here, accommodate 60 parking spots off-site. It's not off-site. It's all on-site. When the food trucks leave,
They usually come in 2 or 3 people in one car. They get together, and the 2 or 3 workers, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, whomever, they come in one car. So those cars double up in the stalls. So even though we'll have 60 trucks on site, after that, in a sense, we'll have 30 stalls filled with little cars that are the cars that they commuted in, leaving a tremendous area open for people to come in and visit the barbecue. And then Bayshore, met with Bayshore Electric. If we ever decide we want to work harder than we're already working and want to have extended hours, then Bayshore Electrical will let me have the use of their lot. And they'll give that in writing, as long as we keep the lot clean and so forth. So we have expansion possibilities, is all I'm saying. So that's how it works.
So only one person per truck?
No, it's usually 2 or 3, but they come in together, they commute together.
So that, yeah, what I'm saying, but 2 or 3, so that would be, so you have one truck coming in, so someone, if you have, I'm not following those numbers.
By state, okay, let me start from the beginning. By Environmental Health Department for Alameda County requires a food truck to park on a licensed facility, to store their food in a licensed facility. We'll have a big 80-foot cooler freezer. So they know, the Environmental Health Department knows where the food is coming from that's being processed. In the morning, Joe, Jack, and Jill drive in. One person may get the truck ready, put ice in the truck, get everything ready. 2 people go into the kitchen. They're chopping vegetables. They're making rice. They're making all
They drive
the
in together in one vehicle?
Typically, yes. I've checked it. I've called a lot of the food
Okay,
trucks.
so they would park and take their truck?
Exactly.
Somebody else might come, would they park behind the first person? No.
It's going to be a coordinated effort on this parking.
Okay, all
It's
right.
not like it's going to happen magically. We're going to have to enforce, and we're going to have to learn who starts early. Some trucks start at 2 in the morning, others at 3. You know, some trucks hit the stadium and do dinners, and they come back in after the ball game. So it's going to be a learning curve to coordinate these cars, but we have plenty of room.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the premise is that basically one food truck spot can accommodate 2 regular vehicles.
Absolutely. Those they're 24 feet long.
Okay.
I just had one other last question that's more sort of architectural in nature, maybe
Sure.
for the architect. At least it showed on the latest plans that there were new windows that are being installed on the south elevation on the far side, on the left side there. What's the proposal for those? Are those, I mean, they're not drawn to match the existing on the right side and at the top? Are they going to be different? What's the material going to be? Do you have any information on that?
These windows right here are all existing.
Right.
And they're rotted, so we're putting new windows in here. That'll still have the mullion look, so it matches the 1958 build.
So are they going to be steel-framed windows?
Yeah, exactly. No, these will be new windows that look steel framed. They're gonna have the mullions.
Right, but what does look like mean? What kind of material is that?
They're fiberglass. They're gonna be a fiberglass with the architectural mullions. It's the closest thing I can get. They don't make the steel windows like that anymore. So these are just being replaced. These are being replaced. This door is existing. These windows are being replaced, upgraded to new. These will be cleaned, the frames stay on these. We're just cleaning them and we're gonna prime them and make them useful and put new glass. These are the new front door entries, and these are 2 added windows.
And are the front door entries aluminum framed storefront?
Exactly. ADA compliant, swing in.
And the windows on the left are also fiberglass
They'll be
proposed?
matching. We're getting as close to this look as we possibly can, and we found this in a fiberglass product that we're manufacturing right now. Yes. I love that window look. So it's really hard to duplicate it, but we're trying our best. Got to go with the newer technology.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's the south elevation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
I have one last question.
I have a question too. Go ahead.
And maybe staff can answer this if the applicant can't, but is there a height limit in the CMX district?
Yeah, height limit, I believe, is 45 feet, and this is under that.
And this is under that? Okay, I just want to make sure if that signage that's proposed for the top of the building doesn't exceed the height limit.
Yeah, we're 33 feet, I believe, from base to the ridge.
Okay,
So we have plenty, but we're not going to go overzealous with the big sign. As long as we can see it, we've got great visibility there.
okay, thank you.
Have you contacted the Bay Area Air Quality Control District to determine what kind of permit you need for the grills and all of that?
The outdoor barbecue, yes, being that it's on wheels and it's a movable grill, it's allowed.
Pardon?
Being that our barbecue is on wheels, it's considered a portable barbecue, like a tow behind.
Yeah.
So it is allowed. It's not a built-in fixture.
Okay. It does, so you don't require a permit from the air district?
As long as it's got a tow hitch and wheels on it, it's a tow behind.
Okay.
It'd be a monster.
That's the one barbecue you have, is the kind that's like, it's at the farmer's
No, this
market?
barbecue actually looks like a horizontal missile. I mean, this thing's 18 feet long and barbecues 500 pounds of beef at a time.
But the air district, I mean, I looked up the regs, and in the air district, if you barbecue 400 pounds a week, you need to get a permit. I think.
I am unaware of that. We found out that the trailer
so.
type of barbecue was legal because it was on wheels and it's considered a tow behind. I could look in further to
Yeah.
what you're.
We have one letter from a neighbor, and they raise concerns about the odors and the smoke. And I think it's a legitimate concern. I'm
Well, it might
concerned
drown
about
out
it
the
too.
carbon monoxide and everything from the freeways.
It would be,
It's a,
yeah.
Well, and to follow up on that, I noticed, and I do think that, I also think this is a very cool business model overall, but I was reading the business plan, and on page 7 it says, "We'll put up huge fans to blow the smoky goodness all over both freeways."
It's an overzealous.
Crazy.
Attorney. We're not blowing any fans. This isn't 1954 Carnival. Okay, we're not. There is so much directional wind that happens there. We don't need any fans.
Okay.
Well, no.
Anyway,
You are going to smell barbecue. You
Uh-huh.
are going to smell barbecue.
Okay.
Wind blows 85% of the time straight from the west, and it's going to go right to Gateview. And I really am legitimately worried, I think, that if this is approved, we will hear from all of the people who live in Gateview. And this is it's a big kitchen, it's a big operation.
Well, the only smell that you're going to really receive is the outdoor barbecue, the smoker that's going to be outside.
And baking bread.
Is that such a terrible smell? I mean.
No, not necessarily, but it might be if you have to deal with it every day.
Well, this thing has been a storage, it's been a welding shop, it's been automotive, almost pick and pull.
Yeah, I know.
When you walked into this building before, you couldn't even stand the stench of what this place smelled like. This whole place has been cleaned up now.
Yeah.
And so I think very, very minor, if I wake up in the morning and I'm smelling fresh baked cookies and bread, to me, that's not going to be really a difficult situation to. But it's not going to be anything crazy, okay? But there's always somebody who has maybe a different sense of smell.
Yeah, but Mother's Bakery, was it Mother's Bakery in Oakland, was pushed out because people got tired of smelling the cookies.
Is that right?
Yeah. And it turned out that dough smell was there's something toxic in that. The delicious smell.
We're not doing toxic cookies.
Well, no, there's something, a yeast part of it yeah, so I'm not saying that there's something to be conscious of.
I would certainly be a lot happier if you needed an air quality district permit so that you would have the appropriate carbon filters and proper filtering equipment on the exhaust. That would really minimize the amount of air pollution and hopefully odors that would be coming from the building.
I will definitely look into it, because if that's a requirement that you're suggesting exists, then I have to.
I know there are limits. I mean, there's certain kinds of cookers in the regs that are required, and it looked to me like the threshold was like 400 pounds a week of beef and something else. 800 pounds of something else, I can't remember.
I have no idea.
It looked to me like you'd be cooking that much, you would be cooking that much there, I think. You'd be cooking pretty high volume of
Sure, we're going to be doing catering events of 100 to 1,000 people.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
You could always
But I don't believe that, and I'm not sure. I don't know whenever anybody goes out, a Kinder's Barbecue or Dickie's or any of these other barbecue, if they go on site, if they have to pull any type of a permit to barbecue, because we're considered in that portable area.
Yeah.
But I'll look into, I will look into it.
It'd be good. I think you should. Yeah. I'll tell you, we have complaints from Al's Big Burger on San Pablo, and they are so small they're not regulated.
Okay.
And we know that, and because I've been asked to look into it in the past, and it has been an issue in Albany, and neighbors a block or two away have complained on on some days, so.
Well,
it's-
that's a retail area, we're in an industrial area, or
That's right.
a light commercial, it is a different zoning.
That's right.
We are off the
I
bay,
agree.
and I tell you, when I get there at 6:30 in the morning, sometimes that bay is not that pleasant, you know, at low
Yeah.
tide.
Well, I know.
Okay,
That's
so,
true.
Okay, but
low
more to
tide, yeah.
more to the point, though, we do need to make findings. You're in an area where you need to get a use permit for any use, and we need to make findings to be able to grant that use. And one of the findings we need to make is that there are safeguards afforded to prevent noxious or offensive emissions such as noise, glare, dust, and odor. And it was going to be one of my comments in general that I'll just make now, that I don't think there's any analysis provided to support that finding. And so if you're coming to us asking for a permit, I think you need to work with staff to provide information to help us make that finding.
100%,
So-
absolutely. That's a curveball, I've never even heard of that. So I do want to look into it starting tomorrow.
Yeah, we forgot to, we went right into the discussion. We didn't do public comment, but we might have some more questions.
Sure.
So let's, is there any comments, speaker cards?
I don't have any speaker cards, but we have a couple members in the
Would you
audience,
like to
so
come
we
up and-
can come up and speak.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ali Islami. I am the new owner of 650 Cleveland, just 2 doors south of, yes.
Okay.
And I got the notice a few days ago. When I read it, I was pleasantly surprised to see such idea is being evolving and happening in our neighborhood. I actually, for my own place that I just purchased, had in mind to have a professional commercial kitchen for my own operation that I have in Berkeley and Oakland. So, you know, that's why that I went to his premises, and I was very curious to just check it out because somebody else was doing what I had in my own mind. And I met August, and that's why I'm here. I just wanted to come and say this is a great idea. It's a great reuse of the space, and I'm sure he's going to succeed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers from the public? No? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. And you were very interesting. You finished speaking?
I can go on.
Please, go on.
I'll just say, again, I do think, this seems like a creative use for this site, and I think it does seem to be serving an unmet need for the booming food truck business in the Bay Area. And I think this is an appropriate place to put that kind of use. Certainly, out of anywhere in Albany, this is like the most appropriate place you could put something like that. And so, in general, I'm inclined to support this, but I do want to, when it comes back to us, I'm hoping to just see a little more analysis about the odors in particular, and just the information that we need to be able to make the findings to grant the permit. So in addition to analysis about odors, including whether any air permits are required, I would like to, see some more discussion about the landscaping and generally what you're doing to, incorporate the site into the neighborhood. And I know it's an existing site and you're making improvements, but again, just help us make those findings would be my.
But our landscaping is gorgeous, we'd love to talk about it right now.
Great. Well, I don't think that's necessary, but it's just, again, next time you come back, just give us the information that we need to be able to make those findings. And I do think that some more attention needs to be paid to the parking as well. And again, it sounds like you've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but just help us understand what it is you're proposing to know that there aren't going to be any issues with the competing, the trucks parking at one time and employees parking and customers parking at different times. So those are my general comments. Thanks.
Sure. And I just have a couple other, I agree that I think this is an innovative business model. I think it's the right location. I do think there are still some details to be worked out. So I'd say when this comes back next time, the windows, I'm a little bit of a stickler on windows, and we are doing a design review, I believe, on this. I don't feel like fiberglass windows are an appropriate replacement to go into an industrial building. They do make steel windows and aluminum windows that are appropriate replacements to sort of traditional industrial steel framed windows. So I would want to see some other options provided along with a little more detail about those specifications of the window types, the mullion types, or mutton types that are being used, so we can really see the detail to make sure it's not going to be these sort of white plastic looking frames popping out on an industrial building, which you do see from time to time and always are just incredibly jarring. I feel like they're not compatible. So I would want to see a little bit more information on that, and then similarly on the signage to get a little bit more information, maybe some sign details so that we can get some assurances that they are, I think what would be more appropriate, the most appropriate here, which sounds like what you're thinking, but I would just want to actually see it in the plan set, indirect illumination, so not sort of directly illuminated acrylic cabinets. That's, I think, what we probably don't want to see, these big glowing boxes, particularly given that there are residences across the way. I think an indirect illumination, sort of an aluminum system, and have some continuity amongst the signage so that they don't look kind of tacked on and random and different sizes and shapes. And I mean, I know there might be different branding, but there should be some continuity and some thought put into the sort of sign program for the site, if you will. And then just the last thought that I had, or two last thoughts, on the floor plans, I don't have any problem with the brewery and sort of the concept of it getting there, but I also think the plans we see should be reflective of what's being asked. So if right now phase 1 is a takeout cafe, I think we should see the floor plans for a takeout cafe, and if it evolves to a brewery a year or two from now, and that I assume probably would need to come back for some sort of modification, or then those plans get evolved to reflect what's happening. But I want to actually see what we're being asked to approve, and not sort of the long-term vision. And then just the last note that I would make on the odor issue. I know at least in San Francisco for restaurant facilities, we do have standard conditions about the air filtration equipment that goes on to the rooftop mechanical equipment for restaurants that basically scrubs the odors. And I think it's a pretty standard thing. So I agree that it might be worth getting a little more information on what type of ventilation systems are being proposed. And I don't know whether it's industry standard or just our best practice in San Francisco that we use, but something like that should be a way to ameliorate, concerns of it being sort of an unreasonable amount of odor that it escapes. But again, those to me are all sort of just the details to get worked out. But overall, I do think the game plan here is an appropriate location, kind of in an exciting, innovative use. I know there's a huge unmet demand for commissary kitchen preparation in the greater Bay Area, and one that it's really hard to find facilities that are of this size and can meet that demand. So I think this is a great location.
Excuse me. I will, I concur with Commissioner Wadi's comments, and I'll just push them a little bit further. I know a lot of the residents who live in the residential towers across the highway, for instance, Gateview, have expressed to me in the past their concerns about illuminated highway signs and just illuminated signage in general. And so I would, I guess, just implore you to really look at that. And I think, if anything, indirect lighting and or down lighting, so that it's not uplighting to cause light light pollution. Thank you. And then I would also kind of encourage you to look at, as much as possible, moving any of the mechanical that's on the eastern sort of mezzanine roof to the west side, so that it's, in essence, blocked from view from those residential towers. I know it might not be completely possible, but
what we've done is we have taken a lot of the equipment inside. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's where we really need the filter screening if we're going to have 3 or 4 3
90 feet long. The filter screen would be the albatross. I mean, you'd have to have a filter screen for the filter screen. It might be better just in low profile 3 or 4 units. And we've got them both on the east and the west side. The issue is that we've got a high pitched center. You can't bring the equipment exhaust past certain 45s. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm familiar with all that, and that makes total sense. I think just when you present it to us, provide that information so that we can have it memorialized and be able to respond to it or reference it as a reason why something else wasn't done. And then, and quite honestly, my real concern is just basically trying to minimize light pollution and sort of unsightly sort of mechanical things that might affect the residents who live in the towers. And so that's kind of my biggest concern right now. Otherwise, I think the idea for the project is great. And I think, again, I support Commissioner Waddy's attempts. And I think similarly, as Commissioner Donaldson and Waddy said, similar to the light pollution would be the odor pollution and just trying to address that as much as possible. And so those are my real concerns. And I think also this is just me being nitpicky, but in the most current elevations, just to make sure that they're coordinated, because I know it shows, for instance, in the south elevation, it shows the exhaust hood at the sort of uppermost ridge, but then it's not shown in the west elevation, so that we can make sure that we get an idea that how they are affected visually. My concern.
Thank you. Doug?
I don't think I have any further comments. I'll just summarize. I like the idea. It's very creative. I'm intrigued by it, really. And I do want to see the air pollution potential reduced greatly. I am concerned about parking and the parking management, and I'm concerned about the signage, as Elizabeth has talked about.
Do you like barbecue?
Pardon? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the plans are kind of rough. Like the others, I think it's a great project, and there's a lot of moving parts here that we need to really might see it. I don't know if it'll all come together.
I moved architects. You see that I moved from a previous architect to my new
Okay,
architect.
all right.
So asking him to rush and put all this together, he's done a great job. We will get it perfect.
Okay, well, I just throw out my comments on it then. You have an 8-foot fence. I don't know if that's allowed. I think it's 6-foot fence, unless it's changed in industrial zones.
I think in commercial zones, it's actually 8 feet, but we can
Really?
double check
If
that.
you don't need it, 8 foot's a very industrial look. If you can get away with 6 foot, it'd be better. You have the truck wash. I'm assuming that's a recycled water. I think maybe it's mandatory. It has to be recycled, reclaimed water system with a filter on it. The stormwater isn't addressed, and that's going to greatly influence your plan here, because that's going to take up a little bit of space. You might lose some parking.
Washout facility?
No, the stormwater treatment for your pervious surfaces. It's going to be fairly big.
I'd love to get clarity on that, because when I read through the code, we're only going from impervious to pervious on 2,300 square feet.
Well, then you're safe. If that's the case, then you're okay. But when I looked at it, and I'm not quite sure what's going on, because that whole paved area, I don't know how long you bought it like that or not.
It's been there for years. We had to find it because the previous tenants neglected the building so much. We had to dig up a foot of dirt to get it back down to pavement.
Okay, well then, I'm not quite sure, but the determination, if it's less than 5,000 square feet, then you probably don't need the stormwater. But it would be a nice thing to put in, because you can expect a lot of washout on these trucks and stuff. I don't know where I guess that's going in your washing area.
The washout goes through the grease-trap
Yeah.
filtering system.
Well, that would be great, actually, if it drains to that. The barbecue missile thing, is that going in the building or outside?
That's an outdoor bar.
So that's not located here. That's going to take up some parking, right?
No, that's down near the entrance. When you walk in, you see this large barbecue that's barbecuing.
The propane tank?
It's going to be right here in this patio area. There's an existing retaining wall with the neighbor right here. Here's his retaining wall. So this is a pocket, basically a pocket area that you come down.
Oh, I see that pocket area. Yeah, okay, got it.
That's where the 18
Okay.
barbecue will be located.
Right next to the tree.
Not next to it, away from it. We don't want to.
All right, we'll have to see when it comes. I don't see it.
Fire safely away from the tree.
Okay. Just tree all dripping with grease is what I was picturing. The landscape's not really developed, okay? You have a few plants 10 feet apart, and that's good. The one I'm looking at, this one here, right?
I think all the palm trees in the front.
The palm trees are great, but between it, you got a plant, and then you got 20 feet, you got another plant, and that's your intent. I don't know, what is the gravel in between them?
Where are we, on
On the frontage.
The frontage is right now asphalt, 10 feet back from the curb.
Well, I'm not talking about your plan. Your plan
That would
shows.
be trees, and I don't know if we're required to put a concrete sidewalk or asphalt there. I'd like to just landscape the whole thing.
Yeah, okay, well, it says that, but it doesn't show it, so you're gonna be showing that, I guess, in the next plan. And then the other
It'd
thing,
be prettier doing dry shrubs and palm trees and make it really look pretty. And a nice lighting.
I'd like the idea of looking pretty, yeah, but I just want to.
Well, I do want it to look pretty.
Okay, all right, let me just throw my comments out, all right. Respond, you don't have to respond to it all now. The other thing was, I think the dialogue between the patio and parking is really quite confusing. You got that ramp and you got the steps, but it's going right to the street. So if people are parking in the facility, they have to go through the gate to get to the entrance of the restaurant.
No, the gate is set back. You park anywhere you want, and then you get parked.
According to the plan there, you got a gate that separates the truck parking from that.
You're referring to this gate?
Yeah, that's right. I'm referring to that gate. So it seems like a weird kind of transition from retail from restaurant parking to walk down there through the gate to the street and then come down the steps to that restaurant.
Well, what happens is during business hours for the restaurant, the gate is open. So people park in this area, they just walk through here.
Okay, well, that's great, but it still is, maybe it's a little bit, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe it's better than I thought. They walk through there. No, it isn't, because you got the handicap stall blocking them from that walkway. It's still a little awkward. You got to work that a little bit, I think, to make a nice, graceful entry. Permeable surface, we want to know what that actually means. And then that's all my comments. That's about it, right? So we got we're all excited about the business. We all want it to work, but there's a lot of loose ends here that we want to see resolved, so.
We'll coordinate with Ms. Ashton, we'll get all the information.
Great, okay. That's it, I guess. Closed. Moving on to the next agenda item. No new business? None.
Yeah, no new business.
Announcements and communications?
Yes, we have a couple things. So, as you see on the agenda, we are holding a pop-up event for the Solano Avenue Complete Streets Plan. It will be next Saturday at Flowerland from 2 to 5 p.m. It's a twofold event. We are going to have an actual demonstration at the corner of Solano and Pomona. So there will be a temporary bulb out, and Flowerland has agreed to kind of temporarily green up the corner. So it will kind of widen the space there and kind of give an idea of what we will be implementing long-term along Solano Avenue. Also, as part of that, Flowerland has graciously allowed us to use some of their space to have our consultants put up their preliminary renderings. So we'll be unveiling that publicly for the first time. So it's from 2 to 5 on a Saturday afternoon. So if you happen to be...
2 to 5, okay.
Yeah, if you happen to be on Solano from 2 to 5 next Saturday, stop by, have a cup of coffee, and let us know what you think.
That's the 6th, is that the 16th? Or what?
The 22nd.
Oh, 21, yeah, 22nd.
And just as a corollary to that, we will be coming to the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 10th as just a general informational item. Our consultant who's been working on the Complete Streets Plan will give you kind of the big picture view of how the process has evolved and where we are and where we're heading.
Who is your consultant?
Tool Design Group.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's Tool Design Group, and then they have subbed out with Opticos Urban Design.
I'll miss that meeting, October 10th, yeah.
I'm also, just so you know, I'm going to be out the 10th and the 24th.
Oh, okay.
For those hearings.
Okay.
Needed vacation.
No, that's good.
And then the only other announcement I have, just an informational thing. I don't know that we've really talked about it here, but it has been a discussion at the council. There will be a project once we get past the council review on Monday, satellite affordable housing, we've been talking with them since the beginning of this year on an affordable housing project at Cleveland and Washington. So it's the parcel contiguous with Pierce Street Park. When we did our general plan update, it does have a high-density residential land use designation. So this will be the process where we work with them and engage in negotiations on the land and entitlement processing. So that exclusive negotiating agreement is going to City Council on Monday night. So it's exciting to see that move forward.
Do they have a rough idea how many units they can put on there?
That's to be determined. They had a couple different schemes. It's going to depend on how they decide to site the project, whether they do extensive grading and then build up, or whether they work off of the existing topography of the property.
Can I just point out, I remember when we were reviewing the revised regulations, and one of the things I proposed was opening up Cleveland Avenue, which is basically directly adjacent to where we're talking about, for affordable housing and homeless shelters. So I would just encourage the commission to rethink their comments or positions on that as we move forward, and maybe they might be more supportive of it. But that's all.
Do we know yet with like AMIs or family units or any of those kind of details?
It's to be determined, but I have a feeling it's probably going to be family housing.
What's the size of the lot?
Well, so that's an interesting question. That's also to be determined. It's just over an acre, but part of the process is that we need to determine where the property line is going to go, and then also do a parcel map with the other project entitlements. But it's exciting to see some affordable housing moving forward.
Maybe I should announce I was invited to do a talk to the Albany Rotary Club, which I did yesterday at noon. A little 15-minute presentation on current planning, zoning developments in Albany. So it went well. Went back to 2015, general plan, the housing element, the Measure N1, revising the parking regulations, and then the two current housing projects that we've been looking at in the last few weeks is what I talked about. Ann was there to make sure I did it straight.
Any other comments? Then I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.